The sun hadn't even peeked over the horizon when the headlights sliced through the fog on Maplewood Lane. It was 5:58 a.m., October 12, 2024, in the quiet town of Crestview, Ohio. A deafening crunch shattered the morning stillness. My mailbox, number 4, was obliterated. From my bedroom window, I saw the dark blue SUV reverse like it was just another Tuesday. I didn't need a second look to know who was behind the wheel: Diana Price, the self-anointed empress of the Crestview Homeowners Association, all sharp blazers and crocodile tears. This wasn't an accident. This was war. I'm Ethan Holt, a guy who builds movie disasters for a living. Think exploding bridges and collapsing skyscrapers. Diana had no clue she'd just picked a fight with someone who knows how to make chaos bite back. So, I decided, no more fixing mailboxes. This time, I'd build a trap. 3 months earlier, I'd moved into my grandparents' old house on Maplewood Lane after they passed. Crestview was the kind of place where every lawn looked like it was trimmed with nail scissors, and the HOA's rulebook was thicker than a Bible. For the first few weeks, it was peaceful. I set up shop in the garage, crafting mechanical effects for film studios, happy to live quietly in the home my grandparents cherished. Then Diana stormed in like a hurricane in heels. The first mailbox hit came on a chilly September morning. I woke to metal screeching against pavement, ran to the window, and caught the SUV's taillights vanishing around the corner. My shiny new mailbox lay crumpled like a soda can. I chalked it up to some kid hot rodding or a distracted driver. Stuff happens, right? I spent the afternoon at the hardware store, bought a replacement, and bolted it in. No sweat. Barely 30 minutes after I tightened the last screw, Diana knocked. She stood on my porch, her HOA president badge gleaming like a sheriff's star, flanked by a twitchy guy clutching a clipboard. Martin Wells, her vice president. "Oh, Ethan, what a shame about your mailbox," she cooed, her smile as fake as her concern. She craned her neck, trying to peek inside my house. "We've never had anything like this in Crestview. So unusual." The way she said unusual made it sound like I'd personally invited vandals to town. She peppered me with questions: me work hours, visitors, renovation plans, all while stressing how new folks needed to fit in. "Some blend right into our community," she said. "Others need a nudge." 2 weeks later, it happened again. Same time, same brutal precision. My mailbox was toast. I was starting to smell a rat, but I told myself it was just bad luck. Maybe someone had it out for the previous owners. I replaced the mailbox and added a cheap security camera pointed at the street. Diana showed up the next day, her smile tighter, asking if I had HOA approval for the camera. "Just protecting my property," I said. She nodded like she was memorizing my words for a future fight. "Privacy matters here, Ethan. Cameras can't point at neighbors' yards." She handed me the HOA rulebook, a tome so dense it could double as a doorstop. The third mailbox went down on an October morning, crisp and clear. I was ready this time, watching from my window as the SUV slowed, lined up, and plowed into my mailbox like a battering ram. Metal flew across my lawn, and I finally got a clean shot of the license plate. It matched the dark blue monster parked in the driveway of the biggest house on the block, Diana Price's. The security footage was crystal clear. Every other Monday, 5:58 a.m., she targeted my mailbox with surgical accuracy. This wasn't a drunk driver or a prank. This was harassment, personal and relentless. But why? I barely knew her. We talked maybe 3 times, always polite. Then it clicked. At our first meeting, she'd asked if I was single, suggested a coffee date, and I'd brushed her off, saying I was swamped with work. Her smile had faltered for a split second before snapping back. Hell hath no fury, I guess. When Diana stopped by after the third incident, I studied her like a hawk. She inspected the wreckage with glee, snapping photos for HOA records, and hinting I should move the mailbox to a safer spot. I pointed out it had stood in the same place for 30 years without issue. She just shrugged. Change brings consequences, Ethan. That night, in my garage surrounded by tools and movie props, I made a choice. Diana wanted to play demolition derby with my life, fine. But in my world, we don't just build things that break. We build things that break back. I found a chip of blue paint in the mailbox, the same shade as her SUV's bumper. Game on. I started designing, not a mailbox but a masterpiece of vengeance. A trap disguised as surrender. Meanwhile, Diana upped the ante. Yellow violation notices began appearing on my door like roaches. My grass was 3.2 inches tall instead of the allowed 3 inches $75 fine. My paint was a non-compliant $100. My car, parked legally in my driveway, had an aggressive posture $200. By week 2, my door looked like a bulletin board of shame, plastered with 5 notices in one day: illegal paint, tall grass, suspicious tool usage, and failure to uphold community aesthetics. The fines it $1,550, and Diana wasn't slowing down. She'd park across the street, snapping photos of my house 6 times a day, treating me like a military target. Neighbors avoided me, too scared to catch her eye. The isolation was suffocating, and that was the point. I called my neighbor, Helen Carter, a 70-year-old widow who'd become my guide to Crestview's underbelly. Over coffee, she spilled the tea. Diana had driven out 3 families in 2 years: the Parkers, the Lopezes, and a young couple with twins. She buries you in fines until you can't afford to stay, Helen said, showing me her own stack of notices, 23 in all, for nonsense like improper flag display or non-compliant flowers. Newcomers got tested, she explained. Bow to Diana, and you're safe. Show spine, and she destroys you. That afternoon, Martin delivered another notice. My grass was too tall again, despite being identical to every lawn on the street. I measured it myself 3 inches on the dot. Diana was watching from her window, plotting her next move. The real gut punch came in November. Diana and Martin marched into my grandparents' memorial garden, a 30-year-old haven of roses and stepping stones they'd built with love. She trampled the antique roses, scattered the stones, and ground bulbs into the mud, all while claiming the garden violated setback zones. The fine was $750, plus orders to rip it out in 72 hours. I ran outside, shaking with rage. These roses are older than half this neighborhood, I said. My grandparents planted them together. Diana just smirked. Rules don't care about sentiment, honey. Martin looked like he wanted to vanish, but he kept scribbling notes. Helen recorded the whole thing from her window, later showing me footage of Diana's deliberate destruction. That garden wasn't just plants, it was Sundays with Grandpa's humming as he laid stones. It was home. And Diana burned it down to prove she could. That night, I almost broke. I Googled how to surrender a house to the HOA, even drafted a letter giving up. Then I saw Grandpa's gardening book on the shelf, a note tucked inside: "We plant roses for tomorrow's shade." I sat on the floor and cried, not from defeat but from fire. I wasn't done. I called in sick and spent 3 days in my garage, sketching a fortress mailbox standard-looking boat with a steel core anchored in 4 feet of concrete, built to stop a tank. I ordered Hollywood-grade materials, timed my work around Diana's drive-bys, and installed hidden cameras for undeniable evidence. Helen helped, setting up her own camera and a live stream. Diana's fines climbed to $3,200, with a Monday deadline before foreclosure. She thought she had me cornered. She was wrong. Sunday night, I finalized the trap. The mailbox looked like every other on Maplewood Lane, aluminum, regulation height, HOA approved. But it was a beast, unyielding and ready. At 5:57 a.m. Monday, I stood at my window, coffee in hand, phone recording. Helen was live streaming to her dozen followers. The rumble of Diana's SUV grew louder, right on schedule. She slowed, aligned her shot, and gunned it at 25 miles per hour. The crash was glorious. Her SUV slammed into the fortress, and physics laughed in her face. The hood crumpled, airbags exploded, and steam hissed from the radiator. The mailbox. Not a scratch. It stood gleaming in the dawn, mocking her. Diana sat stunned, airbag powder in her hair, staring at her automotive ruin. I strode out, still recording, as neighbors emerged with their phones. Helen narrated to her growing audience, "This is justice, folks." Diana stumbled from the wreck, shrieking, "This is illegal. You trapped me." I smiled. "Just built it strong, Diana. You know, standards." The irony hit her like a brick. Martin arrived, saw the carnage, and bolted. Smart move. Diana's meltdown was epic, spinning to face the cameras, demanding we stop filming. Nobody listened. Her insurance denied her claim deliberate ramming isn't covered. By evening, Helen's stream was viral, Mailbox takedown trending locally. News crews called for interviews, and neighbors shared their own Diana horror stories. Friday's emergency HOA meeting was standing room only. Helen presented her dossier, 2 years of Diana's abuses, from $2,000 fines for wrong-colored mailboxes to forcing the Lopezes to cut down a historic oak. The room erupted with stories: toddlers fined for excessive noise, homes lost to fake violations. Diana tried to spin it, claiming my mailbox was a booby trap, but the evidence buried her. The vote was unanimous, she was ousted, her fines cancelled. Helen became president, vowing fairness. Within a month, Diana's house was for sale. She was a ghost, shunned by the community she'd terrorized. 6 months later, the garden bloomed again, visited by neighbors who knew its story. The fortress mailbox stood guard, a legend kids asked about, a symbol of fighting back. I got calls from other towns, people wanting anti-HOA blueprints. Crestview changed block parties, kids playing, property values up. Mornings now, I watch families, not threats, from my window. Justice doesn't always knock. Sometimes it roars in with twisted metal and a bully's downfall. So, what do you think? Was I too harsh, turning Diana's game against her, or did she deserve every crumpled inch? Should HOA power be limited, or do neighborhoods need strict rules? Drop your thoughts below, share your own tyrant tales, and hit that like button if you're Team Fortress. Subscribe for more stories where the little guy fights back and wins.